we have a few stories here that I'd like to go through. And the first one being about 401k plans, actually. It's a subject that's sort of near and dear to me because I take every opportunity to speak against 401k plans. Now, those of you who've been on the call before have heard me talk about the fact that they're not very transparent, that the fees tend to be very high, and the funds within a 401k tend to be pretty illiquid. There's, of course, the 10% penalty that you have to pay for withdrawal of your funds before a certain age. And overall, investors are intimidated, first of all, by 401ks because they're not fully educated on the different investment options that are available to them. They're not really provided adequate guidance as far as building a solid portfolio that'll provide them with funds for retirement. So I recently released a series of videos on this topic called Top 5 Myths About Your 401k on my YouTube channel. It's available at youtube.com/Athelon Wealth for those who are interested. I also conducted interviews with people on the street to get their perspectives about the 401k plans, and what I found was not extremely positive at all. So this article here in MarketWatch outlines that the fees for 401ks will be revealed in 2012. Can't wait. It says, save the date. Come April 2012, some 65 million workers with 401k plans are in for a change. For the first time ever, sponsors of 401k plans, employers, will have to disclose what workers are paying for the investments within their 401k plan. Sounds great. It goes on to say, consumer advocates are applauding the new regulation, which the Labor Department says is designed to help workers make more informed decisions about their 401k investments. But some fear that consumers will experience sticker shock and misuse the information. Well, I wonder what party that is. The party that doesn't want this information to get out there, and they're worried that employees will be misusing this information. It's quite interesting. As part of a MarketWatch Retirement Advisor panel discussion held recently, 3 of the nation's top retirement plan experts discussed the new 401k fee disclosure regulation, what's good about it, what's not so good, and how workers with 401k plans should use this information that will soon land in their mailboxes. So this is an interesting story. There's a lot of great aspects to the story, but there's also some things that I have serious questions about. According to Davis, who was one of those panelists, the new 401k fee and expense information will come in 2 forms. 1, participants will receive at least annually a 20 or so page hard copy document detailing the funds in a worker's 401k plan. He says it will be the greatest hits of mutual fund prospectuses. Now that's both good and bad. I think it's great to provide disclosure to employees to let them know what's out there for them and what choices they have. However, mutual fund prospectus is not very well known for being clear and easy to understand. There is a level of financial education that one must have to understand what's in that prospectus. So I think this is definitely great to have this information out there. However, many investors may be in the same situation they're in now, whereby they're intimidated by all of the jargon and all the technical terms that are within that prospectus, and they fail to adequately take into consideration the information within it. So it says workers will have a detailed breakdown of the fees and expenses associated with their 401k plan on their quarterly statements, starting with those delivered in the second quarter of 2012. It says specific fees will be line itemed against their balances inside their 401k plans. And that's great, because one of the limitations of 401k plans, as I mentioned before, is the limited transparency. For an employee to really understand what they're paying, I'm willing to bet many, first of all, have no idea. Second, those that wanted to find out have been limited to asking their HR people or asking whoever is responsible for administering their plan in the company. And most of the time, I'm willing to bet that they're being told, I don't know, you're going to have to contact a different party and so on and so forth. And to get the answer would be quite tricky in most cases. So those are I guess the positive aspects of this article, and this is where it gets kind of fuzzy. So I want to read this quote. It says, there's no additional disclosure other than the fairly innocuous sentence saying that there may be fees inside the funds that are within the 401k plan, which is not the ideal situation, because saying there might be additional fees really doesn't disclose the fees that you're actually paying. He says the way to dig down is to compare the performance of the funds in your plan, which must be quoted accurately, to the benchmarks that are used, which will be index funds. The spread between those two, particularly when it's an index fund and its benchmark index, is the fee you are paying. I don't know where he came up with this. This is completely mind-boggling as to how this person made this assessment, saying that the fund that you're in, looking at the performance of that fund when compared to the benchmark, will tell you the fees that you're paying. And absolutely not. First of all, even if you're in an index fund, which is a mutual fund designed to follow the performance of an underlying index, there could be tracking error. And that tracking error will determine how much of a difference there is between the underlying index and the index fund. And the tracking error is caused by simply the markets moving in a different way than from the underlying index, if it doesn't track it exactly, which doesn't always happen. So if this person is saying that to look at the difference between the benchmark and the fund to determine the fees, that's absolutely ludicrous. Another thing is that if you have a regular mutual fund and the benchmark is a different set of securities altogether, then there's just no comparison there. So what this guy is saying is complete nonsense, whereby you'll be able to determine the fees by looking at performance of the benchmark versus the fund. Complete nonsense. So there goes that idea. If you don't have the fees line itemed and presented to you clearly, there's really no way to determine it. There's no hocus pocus method to do this, unfortunately. I wish there was, but there really isn't. It's not that simple. So that was one of the problems I had with the story, but certainly not the only problem. It goes on to talk about how the additional disclosure will actually be a problem for investors. It says, to be sure, critics say all this 401k fee and expense disclosure could backfire. I wonder who these critics are. And it says that plan participants run the risk of choosing funds in their 401k plan solely based on cost instead of what might be best for their overall portfolio. Interesting. They say, for instance, that plan participants might avoid investing in an emerging market mutual fund, which tends to be more expensive than an index fund that tracks the performance of the S&P 500 index, even though such funds might be appropriate for a well-diversified portfolio. There certainly is a potential at the extremes for some of that to happen. Okay, so they're saying that investors might choose investments solely based on cost, and this might steer them in the wrong direction. On one hand, this again demonstrates where financial education is extremely important. People these days don't really have the best grasp of what the costs are and even what the risks are with each particular fund. So there may be an aspect of truth to that. However, this part of the article really made me laugh. It says the greater risk, even with all this fee disclosure, is for plan participants to keep making the same mistake they've always made, which is to chase performance. Overall, we're finding a tendency for people to chase past performance. We know, despite all the disclaimers that we say past performance is not an indicator of future results, that many people choose their funds based on how that fund has performed in the past. Okay, well, how are you supposed to choose a fund? By the way it performed in the future? Okay, there's no future performance. Past performance is all we have. It's all anybody has in the market, and it's all anybody will have. So the tendency to choose based on past performance will always be, of course, a big factor, because we really have nothing else. No matter what the geniuses on Wall Street have come up with, that's all we have to work with, unfortunately.